We are back. We are back.
What episode is this?
This is episode 4.
Man, we are on fire.
This is so crazy. I was like thinking about it, like, wait a minute. We are 4 episodes into this thing. Welcome back again to the Birdjoy Podcast. I'm Dexter Patterson.
And I am Jason Hall. This podcast is for all the homies across the globe. Just a beautiful, beautiful space where we can celebrate some Birdjoy together.
Yes. If you're here for some Birdjoy. I hope so. I really hope so. Because that's what we're going to give you. We're going to give you a little bit of Birdjoy. So, let's go.
Let's go.
You know, you just mentioned we're 4 episodes into this thing, man. Like,
this is wild, dude. This is
just two brothers talking about birds. Like,
who would have thought?
This is so cool. Two brothers on the air right now talking about birds all over the world. People are listening to us talk about birds. Talk about diversity in birding. You and I on a podcast just nerding out about birds every week.
Yeah, I can't imagine anything better. And I think it's going to be so beautiful today to explore you and I as a symptom and outcome of the actions of many others to get us out there into birding. And you and I as an example of why diversity in birding is so important, right?
Yeah, so important.
Many other folks.
It will kind of give a nice little introduction to this idea of diversity in birding because there's so much to the story. I do want to start off by us just kind of just discussing why, right? Back that word why again. It's like it means something. It's like the why it means something.
That's why we are.
Why diversity and representation are so crucial in the birding community as a whole. Why is it important, Jason?
So, man, we could talk about this for 8 hours. We could have a conference about this. Maybe one day we will. But today, I would start with the same whys that we use for a lot of other things. And it's really, we experience so many things as humans out there. They're not all coming from the same place. And we've had these conversations around the United States, at least around, why is it important to have women in science? Why is it important to have Black and brown folks in science? Why is it important to have diverse schools, diverse teachers, diverse workforce, diverse small business owners? And it's very simple. It's because it benefits everyone, creates a better community. It creates more opportunity. It creates more learning. It creates more knowledge. And if you pare all that down to just the activity of birding, there is no way you can escape the fact that if you get more Black and brown folks involved in birding, if you get more differently abled folks involved in birding, birds will benefit, people will benefit, the activity of birding, the community will benefit. And all that will do is compound on itself. It will grow exponentially, right? And so it's not a very simple answer, but it's a very big answer. It's a very impactful answer because you can imagine what this world would be like if, let's say, the 96 million birders across the country, used in a broad term, was majority BIPOC birders. Like, can you imagine what that would be like, right? Feeding into research, learning, community, mental health. It would just be insane. That is a big why for me, is I want to make sure birding catches all of the resources it possibly can to bring communities of color, differently abled communities, different religious communities into this activity, because it's only going to make us all better.
It's literally, when they talk about representation matters, that's the argument that you give right there of why. Because it makes you a better human being. I think it gives us a perspective on the world that's more holistic. It gives us more meaning to life as a whole when we're not trapped in our own echo chambers and our own little boxes of information, being around a lot of people, and that common thread being this love for our feathered friends of birds, man. I think that's why it's important. Is I think there's so much hate, there's so much division, there's all this stuff happening in people's lives all the time. And I feel like birding can be that one thing that kind of brings people together. And I think if we're able to create those conversations by creating spaces that allows us to make those places as welcoming to everybody as possible, and especially our BIPOC communities, these differently abled birders all over the world, underrepresented groups as a whole, and allies that kind of share this mission that birding is for everyone. That's why it's important. I think it kind of starts with that idea of representation, seeing people that look like you at the birding event, seeing people that look like you or your friends or your relatives leading these birding events. It's just this conversation. We can change it. What people think a birder look like, what people think a birder sounds like, what they think a birder is, how you bird. We can change it all when we start thinking about why diversity, why representation are critical and crucial to the birding community as a whole, all over the country.
I think one of the things that excites me the most is if you look at a lot of the things, let's take music for an example, and the influence of Black and brown folks on music globally, and everything you thought was from one place to the other, especially in the United States. And most times comes down to an African American person brought that heat, that got that whole thing started. Culture, food, music, dance, everything. Then you look at birding and you say, man, where is our history there with the natural world? And it's there. Birding is a great place to get people connected with that, to learn about different figures in history and how they use birds, right? Everyone tells the story about Harriet Tubman using the call of the barred owl. She learned when she was working, I think she was working on a timber farm or something with her dad. And she learned some of those calls because she would be out on these work trips, right? And they would camp. And she used that because it was part of the environment, right? She knew that. Young Moses, who was the slave of Charles Peel here in Philadelphia, and his parents were enslaved, and the laws at the time, they weren't allowed to take their children with them once they were emancipated. Young Moses had to stay with Mr. Peel and ended up learning birds. He is arguably one of the first, or if not the only, or the first Black ornithologist in the history of the United States. And not a lot of people know about
dropping knowledge on
right
today.
There's a great gentleman here in Philadelphia, Matt Healy, I think his name is, has done some research on it. And it's been really great to learn about that kind of stuff. And so you say to yourself, well, what is happening now? What is happening now with the birds? How can these communities connect? And you think of one of my favorites, Dr. J. Drew Lanham, and the works he's come out with, A Home Place, A Colored Man's Love Affair with Nature, right? His book, Sparrow Envy, poetry book. You're reading this and you're just realizing this very unique and deep connection with the world and an environment from a Black man growing up in the South. And you wonder how many of these stories are across the United States that we've never heard, because like many things here, they get whitewashed out of history. And so for me, part of the excitement around bringing more diversity to birding is being able to uncover those, being able to create connection, and essentially making new ones. Because the more people we get into it 100 years from now, some of those folks might be people that our descendants talk about in terms of why they're so into nature at that point, right? So it's really exciting to think about.
Trying to create those personal experiences early in life. And I start thinking about some of my personal experiences and trying to shape some of those experiences for other people earlier in life. Like I always be like, I always liked birds, but I never gave them the attention they deserved. And I waited way too long. So I'm hoping that whether they're showing up at our club events or they're listening to this podcast, that hopefully we're getting some people to pay attention to the birds earlier in life. Pay attention a little bit earlier, and really it kind of go get your own stories. When I think about the stories and I think about going early on in my birding career and going to some of these more traditional birding spaces and looking around, and I'm like, I'm the only Black dude here.
Same.
You know, wait a minute. I don't see nobody that looks like me leading this walk either. Okay. Should I be here? I want people to think about that. We've talked about representation, showing up into these spaces and seeing people that look like you, seeing people that look like your loved ones leading and teaching. That's important. I think that's really important. And I think wanting to be a part of that solution in my community. And that was sparked when I think back of like what happened to Christian back in 2020 and the whole uprise of Get Outside and Black AF and STEM and Black Birders Week back then, and thinking about that movement as a whole and how it really inspired. I know it inspired you. We talked about this. Realizing, wait a minute, there's a lot of the homies out here. We're like all over the place.
It's crazy. Like I remember being on what was then known as Twitter, right? And at first Black Birders Week, one of the first events was like, I was like, hashtag introduce yourself or something like that. And I just took a stupid little selfie of me standing by one of my favorite birding spots. And I was like, hey, I'm Jason. Been birding for this long. Man, I logged on that joint later on and it was just like thousands of likes, tons of comments, other people being like, yo, homie, I'm like down in Philly. Like,
That's
there's
crazy.
people in New York and you're just like, yo, we are out here. And we didn't even know it until these beautiful souls at Black AF and STEM started Black Birders Week. It just like, that's part of the reason why you and I are here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's the way it happened. Right. It's only gotten bigger and better from there. And the amount of joy that we felt in the 5 years since then with our communities that we've helped to build and new people that we've met is immeasurable. I wish I could quantify it in a way that explains to people why that's important to birding. But simply put, you now have a new community of people that are being connected and finding resources and contributing to bird conservation, contributing to communities getting access to the mental health benefits of birding, communities getting access to the data around birding so they can help advocate for green spaces, right? Like this is all really important. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, truly the tip of the iceberg for Black and brown communities getting involved in this. So it is one of my favorite things to think about. I sometimes daydream like the only reason I would want to live forever is just to, if I had like a recliner that I could just sit in the sky and just watch what's happening on Earth, right? And just, what do we do? Where do we go with some of this stuff? What does the Black and brown birding community look like in 100 years? That's very exciting to me. I see it being just this, like, I say this to people all the time and it probably sounds trite to them, but like in the communities that we grew up with, at least in mine, for Black and brown communities, sports was a big thing. And it could have been any sport depending on which community you were in. Basketball. Everyone knows that's a heavily cultural point of Black communities. And it's important. And it's an incredible gateway to learning about teamwork and community and so on. And it's great. And no one dodges that. We love that. I especially living in Philly because you always got these clowns from New York talking about the home of basketball and and whatever. Imagine if birding was like that. Imagine if birding was like that for our community. Imagine if like birding was something that you went out and did with your friends. Now, granted, it's got a little bird nerd tinge to it, so maybe it won't become ever as popular as basketball, and that's fine. But in my future, every Black and brown child, at least in and around Philly, needs to know that birding is an activity they can go do, right? If they choose to. So there's a lot to talk about there with diversity and birding. And I think making sure on this podcast episode that we find some joy around it is really key because like you said, the world is crazy out there and there's a lot of hate and it's very easy to get stuck into the trauma of these situations. And I want people to do their best to try and flip that into, well, where are we going to go now to combat that trauma with joy, with healing, with community?
Yeah, and I would really encourage people to find places like In Color Birding and the BIPOC Birding Club of Wisconsin and all these amazing groups that we've talked about on this podcast all over the country. They're around. If they're not in your community, think about being part of that solution. Think about creating those spaces because I think once we create those spaces, people can call it cliche and they may hate hearing it all the time, but those safe spaces matter. Create them. If they're not there, create them and build that community because it was quick for us. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is like, we created our first event, didn't really know. I kind of had a feeling because I was like, if I needed this, other people probably needed this too. So I had this feeling and I'm like, we created, they shall come. Right. I honestly, that's kind of how I felt. And Jeff was like, I don't know. I said, I kind of have a good feeling about this. I think there are more people that are curious and kind of want to go out here and have a community. We call it our little flock. Just have a group of bird nerds that they can be around, and it's always changing. One thing that never changes is like this welcoming feeling of like, yep, this is my spot. I belong here. That never changes. And I think that's what I'm most proud about is just being a part of that solution, letting people know they are not alone. these spaces are here for you. We will continue to create them. If people aren't there, if you don't have these spaces in your community, reach out, because I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people about that process of creating the club and what it took to do it and the dedication and the work behind it. And I've had that conversation with a lot of people. So is it easy? No. Is it doable? Heck yes. Is it worth it? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So worth it. You're going to bird anyway. Like if it's on your heart to create these spaces and you're already going to be out there, why not create the space and bring more people in?
That's right. There is plenty of room. There is a chasm, a void when it comes to bird clubs that have a very explicit mission of creating on-ramps to birding for BIPOC folks. There's a lot of existing bird clubs, like I said, that they have different statements on their website. Some of them don't even have them on their website about, anybody's welcome, anybody can bird, but what are they actively doing to make sure that happens, right? And I found in Philly that it's been really helpful because in-color birding has just kind of struck out on our own to set that standard. And I've heard from other bird clubs that we've kind of set the pace for them, right? They've learned from us what they need to do in their bird clubs. They invite us to speak. They invite us to have joint events. They actively, and I think consistently now, are seeing that this is paying off. And before it was this more passive thing, but they're seeing now, no, like if we have this joint event, we make friends. I talked to a birder that I've never talked to before, and they live 3 blocks from me. And how did they not know I was in this bird club, but they're an in-color birding club, and now we're going birding together. And I see them on Instagram hanging out, and I'm like, that is the point.
That is it.
Yeah. That is it, right? People, I like to compare everything back to birding sometimes, because why would we not want it to be diverse? The birds are diverse.
Yes.
Even within their own species at the same time. Like I was just listening to another podcast around the ruff, the shorebird, that has like all these different iterations, right? These alternative males and like just these different parts of their genome that makes them slightly different and how they fit into the overall structure of the group and how it all works together. And that's just one species. And you look at the 300 plus species of birds that may come through Philadelphia every year and the amount of joy they give. And I'm like, why would I be excited about going on a bird walk and seeing 65, 70 different species if all my birders were exactly the same? That's not cool. We need to share some of that. Yeah, I just think diversity in birding is just as important as diversity in nature and biology and ecology. It's beneficial for the entire ecosystem, whether it's a biological ecosystem or a social ecosystem.
Because what happens when there's no balance in nature?
That's right. Something's going to fail. It crumbles.
Something's going to fail. That is I swear, like that is how we need to look at this idea of diversity in birding. I think that one of the biggest benefits, and you touched on it, is collaboration. This idea of collaboration, because I think when you collaborate, you open up opportunities for people to continue to learn. And I think when we're thinking about benefits of diversity, it's promoting learning, it's promoting sharing perspectives and learning new perspectives and encouraging participation from people that maybe haven't participated before. And then when they participate, they now have a voice, and that can change survey results. And there's so many different things that we could talk about when we think about diversity. The art of the collaboration is super underrated, because when you begin to collaborate, I know when we first started our club, immediately we had people from the Feminist Bird Club reach out to us and was like, we are so happy that you're entering the birding community. What you do, like, is so needed. And they were so welcoming. It was one of those, that was my first experience in regards to diversity, because there's a shared mission in what they do, because women also are underrepresented and underappreciated in outdoor spaces. And they were serving people in our community and many others. And I was just kind of like looking at the work that they were doing and admiring it. When you get to collaborate with people that get it, that is a huge benefit of diversity. Being more open-minded, being willing to collaborate with people, because then you create, like you said, these friendships, these bonds. You're able to reach more people because you can pull resources and do things, and you make more impact. You make more impact on people that you maybe couldn't reach before. Now you're reaching them because this person knows this person and they're part of that group, and now they know about our group, vice versa. I really love that when I start thinking about the benefits of diversity is it brings people together and it encourages collaboration.
Speak on it, brother. Speak on it, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so exciting to talk about, even though you know that we have a ways to go. You know, there are examples out there. I encourage people to look up the homie Deja Perkins, Deja Perkins. She does research down, I think, at North Carolina. She's got a paper out about birding and the access to data from eBird and how there's a gap in the data coming out of essentially Black and brown or low socioeconomic status communities. And it's fascinating.
I love that we're talking about people need to start using these tools too, because
I know, right? Like, they need to use them. We'll put a link in the show notes, but the name of the paper is Evaluating the Use of Semi-Structured Crowdsourced Data to Quantify Inequitable Access to Urban Biodiversity, a case study with eBird. Boom. Just look it up. It's absolutely amazing. And you realize that some of the social constructs that have limited access to birding or access to nature for Black and brown folks when it comes to the politics of a city, the racial, say, continuing struggle of this country, right? They were intentional. They were intentional in terms of who got the trees and who got the parking garages. That is really key when we talk about providing access to nature, because what it does, and I always refer back to getting this from Tyke James. You know, he talked to me one time about agency, right? And I've never forgot it. And I probably overuse it, but agency, being able to have ownership and make decisions for the things that are in your community. And birding is one way to do that. That's, you know, you say, okay, well, why is it important to have diversity in birding? Well, that community now has access to an activity that gives them mental health. That community now has access to an activity that allows them data to advocate to keep and or manage and or improve their green space. That community now has access to an activity that spurs on additional activities. And maybe a bunch of those children now decide, I don't want to be insurance salesman. I don't want to be an artist necessarily. I want to be a scientist. I want to go study birds. And insurance salesmen and artists are great. Explaining to folks that when you open these activities, there could be a 5-year-old that goes birding, doesn't care for the birds, sees the bugs, becomes the world's best entomologist that they've ever seen. Like, does that not give you goosebumps? Like, that's like what person on the world is like, that is not cool? Like, who would not like
representation matters?
That's why it matters, right? And I see it every time. When my family, my dad's side of the family is from the South. I spent a number of years living in Mississippi. And so there's a part of J. Drew Lanham's work that connects with me very directly when he talks about certain things in the South and my time exploring in the, you know, quote unquote wild down there. That matters to me because my father being a Black man is part of my life, but he wasn't necessarily into nature like that. He's a carpenter. So now getting that perspective from Dr. Lanham, it inflames something in me of belonging, of like, oh, that this is okay that I've been a Black man exploring nature, and it's okay for me to interpret it and to then output it in any kind of way I feel is appropriate, whether it's art, poetry, photography, whatever it is, right? Like, it's so exciting. So it's, to me, it's just the diversity in birding is like an ignition. We're just going to light the thing on fire and it's going to expand.
And I would encourage people, you mentioned the Google being your friend, and it might take some research, but like there are some amazing organizations.
There really are.
Initiatives that are happening all over the country where people are actively trying to promote not only diversity in birding, but like just the outdoor space as a whole. I think about our state of Wisconsin. We have Nearby Nature. We have Outdoor Afro. We have all these different organizations. We have Color in the Outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
All these different organizations that are doing the work just to get people outside. And I always tell people birding isn't about the birds. I just happen to love it. But there are so many other things. And we have people from even some of those organizations that come to our events where their first love is just outdoors as a whole.
That's right.
And now they want to learn a little bit more about birds.
That's right.
And then that kind of leads them down, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be your bird person. And next thing you know, you're just paying attention to them. Oh, I got you. Like, basically, like I be loving those moments where I realize you've asked me a lot of bird questions over these last few weeks and months. Oh, and now it's a year. I got you. I got you. You're a bird nerd. And
That's
you don't
right.
even realize it. You don't even realize it. You're a bird nerd. But I love it. Pay attention. There are a lot of organizations. So shout out to everybody out there doing the work. I know we won't have the time to probably mention everybody, but I know you've mentioned a few.
Well, I got a few.
But I do want to talk about and we'll get to those as well. But I
Mhm.
I kind of want to spotlight Black AF and STEM
Yes,
in
sir.
Black Birders Week, just as a whole for a little while, because I think we briefly talked about how those moments with Christian and at Central Park and how it sparked kind of like this conversation nationally about not only Black birders, but just Black experience as a whole outside, underrepresented groups outside, differently able people outside, women
That's right.
outside. Like there were so many conversations that were sparked. And I think about those events, and since those events, that group, Black AF and STEM, they have continued to do the work. And Black Birders Week, thinking about it this year, bro, 2020 was a long time ago. We started thinking about like this is going into year 5 of Black Birders Week. How's that make you feel?
Makes me feel like time is moving too fast. I'm so proud of that organization and continuing to keep the consistency with that event. You know, it's another example of why it's important. And what a lot of people don't realize is like Black AF and STEM, you know, they put on Black Birders Week. I'd probably argue it's one of their marquee weeks, but it has spawned other weeks or events focused on STEM for other groups. There's a Black in Marine Science. There's a Black in Entomology. There's tons of different groups there that are all STEM focused, a lot of them ecology focused, right? It's kind of created this blueprint, I think, to not only be Black and be in STEM, to celebrate it, to find joy in it. And that's really the key for me. That's the thing that really makes the difference, is that they put this event on every year. And I don't know anyone that doesn't find happiness and joy in it. And a lot of it is virtual. And what they've done now is actually even partner with local groups to promote local events. So you may have a Black Birders Week event in your locality for your local community. In Color Birding, we do one out here in Philly. You guys may do different walks or outings that week in Wisconsin, right? There's other groups around the country doing them. So like it's just spawned this community at the end of May into early June every year. It's our week, right?
Save the date, May 26th through June 1st, 2024, Black Birders Week. Yes,
And
we will be celebrating in Wisconsin. I know y'all will be celebrating. Everybody
bro, we do
all
it big
over the
in Philly.
country, all the homies. There's so many homies doing stuff, but let's just take a little bit of time to shout out some of the homies doing the work.
If you are in Chicago, there is a BIPOC Birding Club of Chicago. So ChicagoBIPOCbirders.org. Check them out, right? If you are in Detroit or Michigan, there is a BIPOC Birders of Michigan, right? You can Google them. We got some homies up in Canada that I gotta mention here because they're doing some wild stuff and it's so beautiful. They're called the Special Bird Service. And they are out there. They are so joyful, very well organized, it looks like. So if you are a Canadian homie, definitely check them out. In California, we have the Oxnard Birders Club, focused on the BIPOC community, led by my homie Angel. And like, so these groups are popping up everywhere. And we were just talking, man, we just found this one that I don't think either of us really knew too much about, but the Urban Bird Collective. And so
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota. I'm looking forward to diving into that, seeing what those homies are doing and getting connected.
Well, you got the flock, the people over there in
yeah. What are they called?
We all over the place.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So like there's different groups popping up, and that's why what you said earlier in the episode is really important, right? If it's on your heart to do something, do something.
Show up.
It doesn't have to be a fully thought out plan to make a 501c3 or a nonprofit organization, right? It can just be just a simple club. And like there's a friend we have that just, younger birder that started at UPenn, and she's putting on, she started a birding club at UPenn, and I see them on Instagram and they out there finding joy. And
go get you some joy. Right? Like, you deserve this. You deserve this.
I love to see it, right? And so even if it's just a group of friends that you regularly put together to go birding together, like do something, create that community for yourself. And that, it's a very well understood story among Black and brown communities that a lot of times we don't wait for a seat at the table. We go build our own table. You can do that. And so let's all do it together. You got me and Dex here, obviously, to answer any questions as you have them, but we encourage that. And let's all kind of rise together here.
Yeah, we got to support our people. So we are here for you. I think that's a big thing. Seeing a lot of love out there. A lot of the organizations that Jason mentioned collaborate. Let's see collaborations happening. I think we had the opportunity to meet some of the homies. Obviously, there's a bunch more out there, but we had the opportunity to get together in 2022. It's crazy to think like that was already 2022.
That's wild, man.
Like
That's
how
wild.
fast some of this stuff is going by, but seeing the growth, I think, is beautiful. You and I talking about birds on a podcast, seeing
I still can't
new
believe it.
clubs are popping up. Our clubs, I keep seeing new faces, and I know I always get excited. I know you probably do too. Like you see new faces. And they seen two new kids last night, and I was just like the joy. I love the questions from the kids. Like they're like the
best.
I don't know. I just love talking to the kids. You're talking about how you spend time with some people more than others. Like I'm always, we'll do introductions. We're talking about getting started with birding and encouraging you to find your community, but we'll do introductions. And somebody say, this is my first time. Like I find myself gravitating to them, and I find myself always gravitating to the kids. It's so like I can't help myself. But I always do that. The people that I feel like need a little extra, or the kids, like we talked about that window to the wonder, and like when we were kids.
Yeah, that's right.
Their minds are ripe for it. So like,
they're ready to go.
We gotta like nurture that. So please bring your kids and let your kids go birding. It's fabulous.
It's so exciting, man, because like the kids are so innocent, and you realize that with the right support from their parents that brought them. Because a lot of times I make sure I'm talking to the parents too around, because so they can see how I'm trying to motivate or excite some wonder in the child. But the kids we have a young man that comes to a lot of our outings, Andre Payne. The young man is just amazing. He's just full of energy. And if you ever look at the In Color Birding Club Instagram, if you scroll down, there's a video of him at one point. We came up on an eagle's nest in a park, and he does like a little hit, like he's on the news, like we're here at the eagle's nest, and did you know it was like this many feet deep? And I get so much energy from him. I think he's actually going to one of the Audubon camps this summer up in Maine, and like I'm so excited for him. But he's, I look at that and I say, okay, well, like when I just return to the dust, people like Andre are going to be out here in the world trying to keep people joyful and learning. And that, we didn't talk about it too much this episode, but the personal and emotional benefit when you have that community is really big. A lot of us know, like, if you've been on the earth for more than like a year, you realize that doing something good for somebody else always feels better than getting a gift.
I love it. Yeah.
And so when you feel like you have provided something to someone that they can take with them for the rest of their life, and you see them, you actively watch them find joy in it. We call that the juice in Color Birding Club.
Yeah,
right? Because it comes from that saying, the juice is worth the squeeze. And the squeeze for us is trying to create this community, putting everything together as the bird club, the board, working on stuff, getting things scheduled, creating partnerships. That's the squeeze. And the juice, the juice is Andre being like, yes, I see the blue-headed vireo and it looks amazing. Right. Yeah, I'm done. I can just pass out on the ground right there. I'm done. You wouldn't love Andre. I have to bring Andre to meet you, because like, you got to come out here. Cause like, I feel like you guys are the same person. Just one is like an adult and one is still a kid.
How old is Andre?
Oh, I think he's like 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah, so Andre, we have Roman. Roman's 9. He's been coming to us since he was 6.
Oh, man.
And Roman, little black boy. And Roman is so, like, you think I get excited? Roman gets excited, bro. And, like, it's so funny. We're talking about, like, community and, like, watching him grow over these last 3 years. I give him the biggest hugs.
Yeah.
And, like, we tell him we love him. And, like, the community has kind of, like, rallied around him. Like, we got him his first spotting scope. Knox binoculars, hooked him up with a pair of binoculars, and we got him, went to his birthday and we got him a field guide, and we got him all these different things. And then like people in the community will say, hey, you think Roman would like this camera? So he's gotten like people have passed down nice point and shoot camera to him. Now he can zoom in and take photos, and he's old school, which is so cool because like he shows up and he knows about Merlin and everything, but he has a notepad dad. And he literally keeps his own birding list. Like we go out and he writes down
Roman
every
is a
bird.
G, is what you're telling me. Roman is a G.
He's 9. And I love this so much because, and we're talking about Black Birders Week. 2 years ago, he was only 7. We had a collaboration with the local Audubon chapter and our local public zoo, the Henry Violet Zoo. We did our Black Birders Week event with them at the zoo, collaborating. We talked about the benefit of collaborating. We had over 100 and something birders show up for Black Birders Week event at the zoo, and it was all families, and it was people and community, and we had a meal. We broke bread. We did all these cool things, and we had such a big group. We expected a pretty big group. Anytime we collaborate, we know it's probably going to be bigger, and that's what we go for. And it's like, it's Black Birders Week. We're going to do it big. You know, we're going to do it big, and it's going to be fun, and it was. But what we did is we actually divided the group into 4. Oh, okay. And we had a Black woman from Feminist Bird Club lead one of the groups. Myself, I led one of the groups. But we had Roman. We had multiple leaders. Roman was one of the group leaders at age 7. He had over 20 people that he guided for 1 hour. When we talk about you can see it, you can be it, representation matters.
Yeah, that's right.
Not only did he start showing up and see myself and Jeff, he saw himself. We talked about the bird nerd flags. We probably need to get them. But as soon as he saw us, he knew he could just be himself. This little boy, when we talk about bird joy, excitement,
it's there.
It is so palpable. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Just an hour, the hour or two I get to spend with Roman every month here or there literally gives me life. Just that little bit of time that we get to spend because it's so real. It's so genuine. But to see him lead, bro, during Black Birders Week, he's putting people on warblers and they're like, he birds by ear. He does things like that. Adults, they were blown away. They were blown away. And they couldn't believe that this little Black boy was leading them as a leader. And that's what it's about to me.
Yeah, like my sister says, Black Boy Joy, right?
Yeah.
It's a hashtag. And it's
you remember that frolicking? You remember that?
Yeah. I love those videos.
That kind of vibe, you know?
Yeah, that kind of vibe.
That's just how we feel, you know?
Yeah.
We out here feeling like we're frolicking.
That's right. That's right. And I can't imagine anything better. Frolicking in a field, looking for woodcocks and birding, you know? Yeah, man. I think we made a solid statement here. You know, I hope people out there really understand that, when we talk about diversity in birding, obviously Dexter and I are focused on Black and brown communities and in many cases differently abled communities. But we also invite our allies out, and we find that, bringing our own perspective, things that we've struggled with based on our backgrounds, it's helpful to bring that perspective to the table when you're trying to create a space for others, right? Others that are not like you. I encourage folks, if any of you are from a background or space that you feel is underrepresented, underserved, be the change best you can.
When people ask why do we need this? Hopefully we gave you some reasons today. I get it all the time. People will email us or they'll comment in our Facebook group or on Instagram or Twitter or wherever they may be. And they'll say, hey, I'm not BIPOC, but can I join you? And I'll say, well, do you want to see a more inclusive, a more equitable and welcoming birding community in the state of Wisconsin? Do you believe that birding is for everyone? If you say yes to those questions,
let's roll.
Let's go. People.
Yeah.
Yes, you are welcome.
Yeah.
Our goal is we want more people from those underrepresented groups to get outside, but I'll never, ever in my life tell somebody that they cannot come birding if they believe in our core mission of just getting more people of color outside and making our birding community more diverse, more equitable, and more inclusive as a whole. If you believe in that, you can come birding with us.
Yeah, and there's so much to learn there with those shared experiences. And you and I know, right? It takes work to curate that space, to make sure that even though we have allies there, you have to still make sure that the Black and brown voices are centered, right? And the experience is centered, because a lot of folks can very quickly slip into, me, and what I think it should be. But that's the work. That's the squeeze. That's what you and I are trying to do.
Yeah.
But I do want to just encourage folks, go look up Moses Williams. And he was written about in a nice article by the gentleman Matthew Hawley at the Academy of Natural Sciences. And it's a nice post about the history of Moses as America's first Black ornithologist. That is beautiful.
I love it. Honestly, I can't think of a better way to wrap this one up.
With Moses.
Show up to these spaces, understand you belong. Birding is for everyone, and even you.
That's right, brother. That is right.
Once again, thank you for joining us on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of birding with us today. Big shout out to Black AF and STEM. Really want to encourage everybody to check out what they got going on social media. Get involved with year 5 of Black Birders Week. I know your club will be getting it cracking. We will as
we
well.
Got some stuff.
Just in general, as individuals, really excited. Nicole is actually coming to Madison. Nicole Jackson.
Nice.
In Madison on June 1st. She's one of the organizers of Black Birders Week, one of the homies.
Yes, she
so
is.
I'm super excited that she's coming to Wisconsin. So I will be looking forward to connecting with Nicole during Black Birders Week for our event and going out with the homie this year.
That's right. That's beautiful.
Beautiful?
That's beautiful. She came out to Philly a couple years ago and led a bird walk at Valley Forge National Historic Park, and it was great. We had like this wildly out of season Nashville warbler. I remember, like, it was just it was a great walk. It was beautiful. It was sunny. It was awesome. She's so fantastic. You guys are gonna have such a good time.
I'm so excited. Yeah. So shout out to Nicole, everybody working on Black Birders Week, and all those amazing organizations that you mentioned. And there are so many we probably didn't mention, but just get involved. Show up to those spaces. They're there for you. Please share, subscribe, and shout out the pod to all your fellow birders out there and help us spread a little bird joy.
Brother, it's been great. I will talk to you.
All right, brother.
Peace.
Peace.